But it was my own reassurance bouncing round 100,000 times in my own ecosphere. If every time you speak you keep it off the record, consequently you can keep your record clear. And if you mute the speech that shakes your frail beliefs, you only seek to insulate your image and continue down the stream in the direction clout and credit steers. Directly from your mouth into am I the asshole Reddit's ears. Directly back into the greasy pockets of some Gates Foundation financiers. And then directly back into the frantic final thoughts of early trial Neuralink volunteers, staring at the numb and mumbling vacancies where recently had been their peers. Half of whom are glitching with the memory stuck on pause, and half have zero fucking clue just who they are or why they're here. It's been said that fear is all we have to fear, but that was back before the Basosphere condenser came along, distilling concentrated fear that's diamond pure, crystal clear, oppressor strong, and woven into every single article you read and song they let you hear. And then Elon heard that Jeff enhanced our fears by 86%, and he said, hold my beer. And not a single sheep among the herd would turn their head or say a word, cause they were all too busy begging for the shears, begging for the muzzle, happy just to guzzle, feed, and watch a screen for all their years. Man, to each his own, can't afford a home, but they'll let you have your cozy little ecosphere, where there among your own devices you can break the seventh seal, overthrow the oracles, and slay the seer. All the tomes were burned and all the lips were seared. Shut your eyes and all our lives just disappear. Now blink 'em twice. Welcome to your ecosphere.
Legend says that Hercules swept Cerberus right off his feet and effortlessly set him down softly as a songbird. Atlas kept the world upon his back and every day wondered whether he could stand it any longer. And Tara Reid came out to say the man they tried to label the messiah of morality was really just another rapist. And I don't intend to hesitate when asked who was the stronger. Tara, like Assange, knew that carrying the truth would be the hardest labor. Tara knew that her assailant wasn't gonna make us any safer, and knew he's just the type of man to hand a decent foreign leader US printed walking papers, and knew he'd be relentless and aggressive in the war he'd wage upon her very character, that his attempts to weaken and degrade and embarrass her would be her only compensation. But I strongly doubt that anyone could ever have foreseen the stream of hate that came from quote-unquote progressives and the self-styled titans of survivor advocation. So if you really think there's something to be gained out of sharing your pain with the world, you are sorely mistaken. The Biden team just dragged their feet addressing Tara's allegations. Until they had a decent list of smears, then they aired them out on every station. And it turns out no one wants to hear the truth of who they praised as being worthy of such bloated liberal celebration. That no one wants to really know the person they've so valiantly defended, even when it meant they had to gloat and shit all over someone braver than they'd be if given the occasion. Now cue the faceless comment squad invasion. Cue those fuckers crawling out the woodwork to come analyze the way you wore your hair and what you wear. Like your appearance waives your rights, or that somehow you're the reason for your situation. Somehow they've decided you should bear responsibility for what such monstrous men insist on doing. Somehow they're deluded by the empty, hypocritical, and useless fucking platitudes that bastard keeps on spewing. And I think it's very telling that the best of their excuses when they try to come and justify our president's abuses is a hearty butt Trump. In which case I'll remind you that you never saw the news attempt to sell us Donald Trump like he was morally upstanding or a decent human. But when Joe says something bigoted or ogles someone's little kid, CNN says, isn't this refreshing? Biden's like a mix of JFK and FDR with all the finer parts of Harry Truman. Christ, I know that they don't think that we're the brightest, but at least pretend we got a couple lumens. Ask yourself if you have ever questioned what they fed you, or do you just shut your eyes and then consume it? And now ask yourself if you ate every one of Biden's lies under guise of harm reduction and the promise of a slight improvement. And now imagine long ago that Biden chose to show you who he really was by traumatizing you for his amusement. Now imagine that you watched him touch a Bible with those filthy hands, and then assume the power of the highest seat in all the land, of knowing your attacker wields a global coalition born of three-letter agencies who'll make a life's mission out of trying to discredit you through lies, damn lies, and collusion. Big tech is never gonna separate from our surveillance state. Fuck's sakes, they're just a breath away from total fusion. So there will come a time where even if you see the light, your voice will never reach the sky through all the bots and all the noise pollution. So trust us when we tell you that the masking of abuses is perhaps this country's oldest institution. And I know nothing nobler than facing it in honor of the truth when you know that the people holding power have been neutralizing truth since there was wet ink on the Constitution. So know that Tara's truth is something crucial to the movement. And if you see yourself a partner to the revolution, help this country see through all the baseless propaganda through the crux of Joe's illusions. And recognize that Tara Reid gave everything she had so she could tell us what the truth is. Recognize the decent thing to do when someone bears their soul and shows their bruises is not to ask for context or offer up your own solutions. Your job is just to listen with an honest mind and put yourself on Tara's side a moment so you understand the path she chooses. That there is no instant fame worth the dragging of your name. And if that's what you think, you've a lot to learn about the kind of facts the mob can handle and the kind that it refuses. You've a lot to learn about the news and all its many uses. Guess you've yet to learn the truth the news will serve as fruit from which they've squeezed out all the juices. And we all eat the husk and just pretend it's full of nutrients and isn't really useless. But the jaws of our ability to yield accountability are absolutely toothless. So don't you kid yourself that any lips are being loosened. They won't ever tell us where the bodies are or show us where the proof is. It's on you to recognize the lechery our president so regularly oozes. It's on you to muster up some honesty and ask yourself how Biden won your trust, but it's America that loses. Open up your eyes and learn to recognize the bruises. Open up your eyes and learn to recognize the bruises.
They'll gladly pay you by the hour for a minute or so, so you can sign off on the towers where they'll piss on your home. And if you feel like you're just powerless to answer them no, it's 'cause you are. They'll gladly pay you by the hour for a minute or so, so you can sign off on the towers where they'll piss on your home. And if you feel like you're just powerless to answer them no, it's 'cause you are. It's 'cause you are.
stagnate, a living wage, snap the chains, bury it. Labor slaves in rusty cages dragged behind a chariot, led by Mr. Racial Jungle, Joseph or Iscariot, fighting over scraps as they barrage us all with variants and BuzzFeed clickbait, straight until we're paralyzed, trying to distract us from the concentration camps that Joe had swore he'd close but only chose to amplify, where they got 50-something kids in cages made for 5 to occupy. And no, she hasn't seen the camps, but Harris swears they're paradise. She tells us the facilities are safe, and that right down to the women, they are regularly sterilized. Then she throws her head back and she proceeds to laugh, that sort of heartless cackle you'd expect from someone working steadfastly on behalf of the virus and a Congress full of parasites. And where was I? I was busy cashing every blue check, demonstrating plainly all the narratives expected from the verified. I was busy breeding verbal leeches by the terabyte. Train them to exsanguinate the wealthy while they sleep at night. Bleed the oil barons dry and barren. Say they showed us how to share and now we share alike. Tell them I contracted rabies from a feral mic. Now I'm just another species losing sleep to noise pollution and these glaring lights, forced to change its habits and adapt to just survive. But now it's safe to say that some of us are thriving in the moment, throwing shit on presidential homes beneath the Paris skies. So if you feel like you're just powerless, I guess you bought the lie. But I can tell they're petrified of our collective might, 'cause I can hear those gentrifiers weeping at the sight of our collective rights. And I only can imagine the intensifying fear of knowing revolution's near, and all that's left to do is simply wallow in the thick anticipation of a rabid bite. And baby, one day you can ask your leaders just what that was like before you grab a slice. So if you think you're powerless, allow me now to change your mind. Honey, if you think you're powerless, allow me now to change your mind. See, they'll pay you hourly, tax them each apart, and build a shining tower out of loopholes and cards, and tell you that you're powerless to keep you in the dark because you aren't, because we aren't. You see, they'll pay you hourly, tax them each apart, and make you build a shining tower out of loopholes and cards, where they'll tell you that you're powerless to keep you in the dark because you aren't, because we aren't.
We want to have just an off-the-cuff chat between you and me, us. We want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.
We're live. We did it. We pressed the buttons.
We did it! Yay!
Yay!
Yay! Tommy somewhere! Yay!
Yay!
Everybody!
Run out.
Indie News Network, collaborative family of independent content creators.
It's American tradition. It's Indie. It's Jesse. What's up, everyone?
What's up, Space Monkeys? Welcome to Political Fight Club. I'm Robert Durden.
It's good to be here. Finally, I'm on Extra Bulla.
I'm Tatami of the YouTube channel Tatami's Diary.
Welcome to another episode of the show your parents warned you about. It's Reef After Dark.
This is the Tommy Nation Politics.
Hey guys, this is Tommy, Tommy Nation Politics.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Politics of Survival.
Hello, my name is Lucy from Greenland Red Wine, and I'm very happy to be a founding member of INN.
Well, hi, everybody. It is, how do we miss that?
We're also available on all your favorite podcast platforms. Again, Spotify.
On Twitter and Instagram.
YouTube, Twitch,
Odyssey,
Facebook Live, Discords, and Telegram. And
Also on Amazon, Apple, Google Podcasts there also.
again, this is it. We use all these platforms to make sure that no one platform can shut us down. That's the other reason for diversification. They're trying to eliminate us.
It's kind of cool the way that these indie media networks they operate differently than these other networks in that you're going to get honest opinions, you're going to get honest commentary because we're not sold out, but you're also going to get a lot of like unique personalities.
At Shutdown Amazon is now either co-opted or has explaining to do. In less than 1 month, he showed up to GQ, Teen Vogue, shaking Aunt POTUS's hand.
I still always like to say thank you and shout out the volunteers and the people that actually make this show happen.
I like it better than anything else.
Yeah, we know, Nancy. We know.
Guys, this is Tommy with Tommy Nation Politics. Free-thinking, innovative, and open-minded new independent progressive media.
We'll see you next time. This was the Politics of Survival.
You keep questioning everybody's motivations, and thank everybody for coming tonight, and we'll see you next week, and download the podcast. Night, everybody.
Don't vote Democrat.
Keep listening to what little birds have to tell you.
Please wash your ass.
Keep fighting that good fight out there, guys. I'll talk to you later.
Who are these people?
What's up, fam? How's everyone doing?
Hi.
It's Wednesday. How's everyone in the chats? We already got people here. Look at that. Isn't that nice? You know,
Yes.
I'm here, as always, with my co-host, I guess, Care Bear, Collin Radix-Carter, the lovely man himself. He's here.
The same. Although I'm not here every week, I'm here most weeks. I've missed a few.
Most weeks.
Yeah.
You know.
Like, I think I've only not been here for like at least 3 or 4 out of our 36. Well, we're at 36.
36. We're going to be at 50 not that long from now.
Actually, technically more than that because we've done specials that haven't included like yesterday's stream. And then,
which people should go check out. You know, click that little live stream, past live streams in the YouTubes. Go click that one. You know, there should be some links in the description to give to some lovely causes Collin is a part of.
Like I said to me yesterday, so thank you guys for supporting me in the stream. Also, I just want to give a verbal shout out to Heartlands Media, especially Kit and Jerry for having me on yesterday to talk about my work at EmpowerEd, and obviously thanks to my brotherhood at the INN team to also allow me to do that. And yeah, so far I didn't say this actually, but I said my goal is to raise $300 personally. I think our goal for the organization is $6,000. I have to check. Actually, I can check right now. Right now, our organization's raised just shy of $2,500.
Okay.
And I've raised personally right now 45. So on our way. But like I said, you have until the end of December to give, which is great. And also, if you decide to become a recurring donor, I think it's still valid through the end of the month. Not sure if it was something special for Giving Tuesday yesterday. At least yesterday, your donations will be doubled up to $100 if you become a recurring donor. I'm not sure. I have to check to see if it's still valid. But either way, one-time donations, more than okay. If you can't give, no worries. Watch the stream anyway. Support us, you know, and just learn what I'm doing at EmpowerEd. Anyhow, but yeah, thank you guys for showing up, showing out, and continuing to support and supporting me in my work. But anyway, how you doing, Reef?
I'm doing good. We brought stories this week. We brought another 4.
Yes, we have. Look at us.
I know, right?
Bringing to 6 stories.
Doing it up, doing the things. Let me pull them up. How about that? We got Trudeau versus Xi. You know, is that how you say his name? GZ. Okay. Xi Jinping.
Xi
Jinping, I think, right?
Yeah. Yes, Xi. Or something similar to that.
Gotcha. We've got I also brought this story about the zombie virus. Do you know the zombie virus?
Well, I made fun of you yesterday because I know Kyle Kalinske reported on this.
so much better than Kyle.
I didn't watch it, but I'm sure you're gonna do better than what how he reported on it.
It's one of those easy stories you don't have to be politically aware to do, but since we are, we're gonna do far better. You know, you brought some stories.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of talk about ballot initiatives, and actually, if you did watch Heartland's Media yesterday, I did talk about ballot initiatives initially, and currently enough, Roger Meadows, who's friend to the show, actually tagged me on this. And I was planning to talk about this anyway, so I figured, but I think in light of discussions that I've had with Reef over the week, which I'm sure we're going to talk about once we read it, and I think it's in light of even what happened today with the squad. I think this is definitely a valid thing that we need to start talking about more on the left in terms of organization and what that entails in order for ballot initiatives to stick. And
Great
then,
thumbnail, by the way. I like that.
Oh.
That's good.
Oh, which one? This one?
Biden face palming, yeah.
So Biden, the champion for climate change, has actually approved an oil export project, which goes against everything. He's been to. You talked about COP, the conference in Egypt that he just went to a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah,
and funny enough, how no one in the media is going to report, and mainstream media is going to report about this, but we are, just to kind of show what a low life and a disgusting human being Biden is. But we're going to talk about that as well tonight. So, like, share, subscribe. We got to do. You guys do the things. We're trying to get to 1,000 subs, so we can get into that monetization game. And once that we're able to do that, we're able to do more, just as far as hopefully, I think we could say this, we need some more folks to join us in this network in terms of like behind the scenes stuff. So if you have any interest in doing that, or if you are interested, shoot us a message on the Twitters.
Or if you're interested in learning how to do things like editing or streaming stuff, if you've got like a gaming PC that can handle some of this or any of those things, reach out to us. We'll see how you can fit in here,
But we're so close to 1,000. I think, definitely over the last few weeks, we've really been cruising along a little bit with those subs. So we're looking like we're completely on track to make it by the end of the year, by the new year. So definitely we want to start 2023 strong as far as having that 1,000 locked in and continuing to grow from there. So thank you guys for the support. And
make sure to share the stream, like the stream, tell them all to sub, hold them at gunpoint, do something, figure it out. But anyway, you want to get started? You ready?
Sure.
Okay.
I'm ready.
Let's do some stuff. All right. Let's go here. And let's go here. And this, I think it's this button, right? This button. Yeah. There we go. So Z versus Trudeau, how China is rewriting history with the colonial West. So this is from Mint Press News. Ramsey Baroud from them. And I know we've been seeing a lot of like narrative management around China and things like that. I know Collin has some words on that, so we'll get into that, but I figured I'd bring this story because people should be paying attention. But anyway, so we've been paying attention to the COP26. We've done stories on that here. One of the things we didn't really talk about was the G20 summit, right? Which was also happening. So though brief, the exchange between Chinese President Xi Jinping and Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau on the sidelines of the G20 summit in Indonesia on November 16th has become a social media sensation. Xi, assertive, if not domineering, lectured the visibly apprehensive Trudeau about the etiquette of diplomacy. This exchange can be considered another watershed moment in China's relationship with the West. If there was sincerity on your part, the Chinese president told Trudeau, then we shall conduct our discussion with an attitude of mutual respect. Otherwise, there might be unpredictable consequences. At the end of the awkward conversation, Xi was the first to walk away, leaving Trudeau uncomfortably making his way out of the room. So, we have footage. As always, we like bringing footage. We'll see what they say here. Everything they've discussed has been leaked to the paper. That's not appropriate, says the translator. Would you find that appropriate, Care Bear? Yeah.
And that's not how the way the conversation was conducted. If there is sincerity on your part,
free and open and frank dialogue, and that is what we will continue to have. We will continue to look to work constructively together, but there will be things we will disagree on, and we will have to continue.
Let's create the conditions first.
So that was their little brief exchange back and forth.
I actually thought Xi knew English. I guess he doesn't. So
I think he knows some of, it's one of those things where it's like in conversation you probably want a translator, but
right. That's to ensure you're getting what
you can get a few statements out to people,
Right.
So for the significance of this moment to be truly appreciated, it has to be viewed through a historical prism. When Western colonial powers began the process of exploiting China in earnest, early to mid-19th century, the total size of the Chinese economy was estimated to be 1/3 of the world's entire economic output. In 1949, when Chinese nationalists managed to win their independence following hundreds of years of colonialism, political meddling, and economic exploitation, China's total GDP merely accounted for 4% of the world's total economy. In the period between the First Opium War in 1839 and China's independence over 100 years later, tens of millions of Chinese perished as a result of the direct wars, subsequent rebellions and famines. The so-called Boxer Rebellion was one of the most desperate attempts by the Chinese people to proclaim a degree of independence and assert normal sovereignty over their land. The outcome, however, was devastating, as the rebels, along with the Chinese military, were crushed by the mostly Western alliance, which involved the United States, Austria-Hungary, Britain, France, and others. The death toll was catastrophic, with moderate estimations putting it at over 100,000, and subsequently, once more, China was forced to toe the line, as it has done in the 2 Opium Wars and many other occasions in the past. China's independence in 1949 did not automatically signal the return of China to its past grandeur as a global or even an Asian power. The process of rebuilding was long, costly, and sometimes even devastating. Trials and errors, internal conflicts, cultural revolutions, periods of great leaps forward, but sometimes also great stagnation. 7 decades later, China is back at the center of global affairs. Good news for some, terrible news for others. The 2020 U.S. National Security Strategy document released on October 22nd describes China as the only competitor with both the intent to reshape the international order and, increasingly, the economic, diplomatic, military, and technical power to do it. That's from the National Security Strategy document, right? I wonder who put that out. The U.S. position is not at all surprising because the West continues to define its relationship with Beijing based on a colonial inheritance, a legacy that spans hundreds of years. For the West, the re-rise of China is problematic, not because of its human rights record, but because of its growing share of the global economy, which in 2021 accounted for 18.56%, This economic power, coupled with growing military prowess, practically means that Beijing will soon be able to dictate political outcomes in its growing sphere of influence in the Pacific region and also worldwide. Speaking of worldwide, Colin, you know that China's been doing a lot of economic stuff in the global south, especially Africa. I mean, along with the BRICS alliance, which a lot of those countries are joining now and being, you know, making friends with Beijing. How do you feel about that situation? I mean, I feel like it's global West and East versus, you know,
West and East, or how it relates to Africa in general, or just
a little bit of both. You know,
I want to be very careful with this because I know that I don't want to necessarily say I'm too like straddling the fence here, because a lot of this, there is a lot of nuance to this, and I don't understand everything totally, so I don't want to give any inaccurate information regarding this. That being said, China's where they're at now in part due to NAFTA. You know, when Clinton basically shut down everything here, you know, China kind of stepped up and was like, hey, we'll take stuff off your hands. We'll be willing to create these industries in our country, you know. And now, and I don't think, but I think America had the intention of, oh, they're not going to do shit with it. And guess what? Now they have. So now, I think in a lot of ways, the West, America in particular, has basically fed this dragon of China now that it is, literally. And now they're pissed at China, but they're not pointing the finger at themselves, you know, in terms of how they kind of influenced their growth since the 90s in particular.
I mean, how is it when you point fingers, there's like 3 of them pointed back at this way? I think that's how it works.
Yeah. Something like that,
it does seem a lot like Western projection, especially from what I'm curious about is why the right wing in this country, especially, like, wants to fight that economic war with China, you know, but not the one with Russia. Like, you know, just seems interesting.
Yeah. And I wish we had someone on that could really speak to that a little bit more. But I think, you know, especially with the Republican Party, it's mostly in terms of economics and what China represents and how they are basically, you know, controlling shit right now. Like, they actually are doing the thing, especially in the global south. And I think in terms of Africa, for me personally, I know people are like very pro-China, you know, in Africa. Yeah, they're doing great things. Yeah, but you also have to kind of look at it in terms of how, and this is probably not the best analogy, but I equivocate to what China's involvement in Africa to college students taking on student loan debt. I think I've given you this example before. If you are in a position once you graduate and if you have the right job or in the right industry where you're able to pay off your debt within a decent amount of time, then you can argue, yeah, like,
it's worth it.
That situation worked out.
You just feel like Africa is indebting itself to like a new insurance company. You know what I mean? Like, they're just going to a different one.
Yeah. And again, it depends on the country. You know, some countries, depending on what industry or infrastructure that China's implementing in those countries, some are able to, you know, pay off their loans to China. Others may not be able to, you know, just due to whatever corruption that exists, you know, within those countries. So,
especially with like, you know, with what we've seen at both COP26 and, you know, these G20 summits, like, the idea is like we have to control the global South and Africa's resources and carbon emissions, you know, and Africa's like, yeah, but we need to still build shit. Like, you know, so
I think my issue always has been the fact that China is kind of stepping in to take over those industries in Africa versus Africa building those resources on their own.
Yeah.
You know, and kind of elevating themselves in that regard.
No, I agree with you there. I think it's even if it's appreciative, it's like, yeah, but you don't need a bedfellow, you know? It's kind of one of those, if you could do it yourself, you should, you know? But granted, we have been economically destabilizing that region forever, and
and then it's like, you know, and now the US is basically like, what to China, basically like, what the hell are you doing here? You know, like,
well, and stuff that I think that's why, I think that's why, like, when you look at, you know, and just to pull us back in this argument, this article a little bit, you know, it's China, both China and Russia have had the same kind of, they've been shunned from, you know, the Western powers as well. So it's kind of like, they go down to Africa, they can appear much more friendly. Like, yeah, they don't like us either, you know, and they've done similar stuff to us, you know, so like,
you know, it's all, you know, like, it's all capitalism at the end of the day, you know, so it's like, I don't have any more love for China or Russia or anyone in the West in particular, because they're all ruled by oligarchs, essentially, you know, in all those countries. The only difference is, I think, you know, with China and Russia, they've been somewhat, as you said, shunned throughout history. So they can come across as more sympathetic. You know, it's still the same shit, but at least you can argue there is some better intent with Russia. And then, like, Russia and China doesn't necessarily have the foothold on the globe compared to the US, especially on the military in the military level. Like, China and Russia doesn't even come close to what America has in terms of military bases around the globe, you know, like the kind of firepower that we have. So, you know, so it's just kind of like, again, pointing fingers at like the two growing superpowers who legitimately can overtake the US as far as world domination. And that's what America is afraid of. You know?
I need to find, I was watching a video. I think you were there for a little bit of that video, and I might pull it into a segment. But it was about how at some point we switched our military, like the idea of how we spend in our military from being like what we were dealing with at the time to what we could deal with ever, you know? And it became focused on like, you need to be able to deal with every contingency. So we became this gigantic, like, you know, military force essentially, that like could deal with all of the next armies could fight us and would have a very difficult time, you know? So, which is also why we started putting bases everywhere, you know, like it was part and parcel in that, and went into like how we started doing like the whole, the Star Wars program, that kind of stuff was part of that, you know. It was all based off like a particular wording on a policy change somewhere. But I'll find that video at some point and we'll cover that too, because it was good. It was written a little weird. It was like written by like a history buff guy, so it's like a little kind of romanticizing the, you know, stuff a little bit, but you know, whatever. But anyway, to get back to this story a little bit, the irony in all of this is that once upon a time, it was China, along with most of Asia and the global south, that were divided into spheres of influence, seeing Beijing creating its own equivalents to the West's geopolitical dominance must be quite unsettling for Western governments. For many years, Western powers have used the pretense of China's human rights record to provide a moral foundation for meddling, purporting to defend human rights, and champion democracy have historically been convenient Western tools that provided a nominal ethical foundation for interventions. Indeed, in the Chinese context, the Eight Nations Alliance, which crushed the Boxer Rebellion, was predicated on similar principles. The charade continues until this day, with the defense of Taiwan and the rights of the Uyghurs and other minorities being placed on top of the U.S. and Western agendas, respectively. Of course, human rights have very little to do with the U.S. Western attitudes towards China, as much as human rights and democracy were hardly the motivator behind the U.S. Western invasion of Iraq in 2003. The difference between Iraq, an isolated and weakened Arab country at the height of American military dominance in the Middle East, and China today is massive. The latter represents the backbone of the global economy. Its military power and growing geopolitical import will prove difficult, if at all possible, to curtail. In fact, language emanating from Washington indicates that the U.S. is taking the first steps in acknowledging China's inevitable rise as a global competitor. Prior to his meeting with President Xi in Indonesia on November 15th, Biden had finally, although subtly, acknowledged the contested new reality when he said that we're going to compete vigorously, but I'm not looking for conflict. I'm looking to manage this competition responsibly. Xi's attitude towards Trudeau at the G20 summit may be read as another episode of China's so-called wolf diplomacy. However, the dramatic event, the words, the body language, and the subtle nuances indicate that China does not see itself as deserving of global importance and respect, but also as a, where's the, hello? Did we like miss a, did I miss a slide somewhere? Oh, look, hold on. I had to like undo this a little bit. I'm looking. No, that's zombie virus stuff. Where is... Well, I'll probably find it later, but here's what I'll do. I'll just go to the
directly
website. Yeah. And I probably got to give you the code again. Right. We'll do that.
Maybe. Right. Okay.
And now this is super small to read. What did I end on? Okay, it's literally like one paragraph that's like missing. So hold on.
You can probably just read it just from right there.
Yeah.
Not have to go to that.
So Xi's attitude towards Trudeau at the G20 summit may be read as another episode of Chinese so-called wolf diplomacy. However, the dramatic events, the words, the body language, and subtle nuances indicate that China does not see itself. Yeah, we read this. So that was the last paragraph. God, I'm dumb. Sometimes
just a couple of a half sentence you missed.
Gotcha. Weird.
Yeah.
Itself as a, but also as a superpower. Gotcha. Yeah. That wasn't in there. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. Okay. Thoughts?
I mean, yeah, you definitely have to give me a new code. But yeah, I mean, it's not surprising, given, you know, this fear and trepidation of China, but I think also like this low-key hatred of China as well from the West, and I think especially in the US. And I think Xi, in this case, is right to kind of like, don't fuck with us, you know, essentially. So I think he's the one who, and I think given the history of China, you know, has to be the one to kind of, you know, be the one who's dominant and kind of say, you know, like, look, you know, we're not to be fucked with, you know, so don't, you know. And I think, and obviously it's looking like Trudeau and even Biden have both responded in kind, you know. And that's why I think, especially with Taiwan, is it looking interesting? You know, I think over the summer, you know, like, especially given what was happening, you know, it looked like we could have been in the potential war with China, you know. But I think that's more of a reason why we need to look at Taiwan or watch them, I think, especially over the next 2 years. Because I don't think the US will be stupid to go to war, or anyone in the West is going to be stupid to go to war with China directly. But looking at Taiwan makes a whole lot of sense. So, so I think this is Xi's way of being like, "What's up?" You know?
Yeah.
In that regard.
Like, y'all want to start some shit? Y'all want to talk some shit? You know, we're here now. I mean, he's mainly like, he's like, yeah, all the things that I told you in confidence were leaked to the press. Like, that's not a good start.
Right.
You know, put some respect on my name. Like, that's essentially. Also, I love, what was the story you brought yesterday? Had that in there. You got to put respect on my name. It's in like a teachers union story. It's like, dude, you can't be putting like Birdman, you know, like, I think I have, where is it at? Like, you can't be putting Birdman in here.
Put some respect on my name.
You can't be doing that. Like, have you ever seen that video? It's pretty hilarious. Yes. Like, him coming on with this entire squad, like, on the Breakfast Club, you know? Like, relax, Birdman, it's all right. We're gonna be fine. Anyway, ready for our next story?
Yeah, I need a code though.
Okay.
So yeah, while we're doing that,
it's the same code. Funny enough. It's just, I don't know if it I don't know if it's like, oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Look at that. Cool.
Yeah, it works right where it's supposed to. So yeah.
Nice. All right.
But yeah. So yeah, so this story, as I said, those of you who know Roger Meadows, he's prolific in the space. You probably have seen his super chats on Savvy and Heartlands Media in particular. But he's basically, I know him to be like, among other things, the Ballot Initiative guy, because that's what he promotes. And he actually tagged me with this article over the weekend, and I actually read it over the weekend, and I was planning to do it anyway. But I think, you know, in terms of conversations I had over the weekend, early in the week online, and then, you know, as I said today, was just a shit show in terms of, like, you know, squad members basically siding with corporations in terms of the railroad workers striking, you know. So, you know, and I strongly believe that on the left, we cannot depend, the squad has proven this, we cannot depend on anyone in the federal government to do right by us. So, that being said, I talked about this a little bit on our midterm stream with Due Dissonance, how certain ballot initiatives passed, especially in red states, like some that you know, secure the rights of abortion, like in DC, giving tip workers larger minimum wage. I believe in Missouri they legalize marijuana. I have to check, but these were done via ballot initiatives. So the question that we're asking is, are ballot initiatives the way to go moving forward? Especially right now, we're heading into a lame duck session in Congress. Nothing major, you know, no progressive policy is going to get passed. And then we got the new head boss, Hakeem Jeffries, who's now unanimously voted in as the new leadership for the Democratic Party in the House.
The hoes be knowing.
The hoes be knowing. Thank you, Anna. So we need another strategy, basically. So the question is, are ballot initiatives the way to go? And I know you and I had a conversation about this, I believe, on Monday night, and I'm sure we'll kind of rehatch a lot of those conversations here. But the article that I was tagged in comes from Common Dreams. It was written by Benjamin Fong and Benjamin Case. Taxing the rich requires more than policy. The left is finally waking up to the power of ballot initiatives as tools to advance egalitarian and redistributive policy. So in this article, it reads, with numerous initiative campaigns around the country raising minimum wages, protecting abortion rights, and in the case of Massachusetts' Fair Share Amendment, taxing the rich to fund public services, the left is finally waking up to the power of ballot initiatives as tools to advance egalitarian and redistributive policy. Where legislators are either too timid or too compromised by corporate interests and wealthy donors, voters tend to back progressive policy, even voters who tend not to choose anything with a D next to their name. Floridians in 2020 and Arizonians in 2016 both went for Trump and increased the minimum wage. Running ballot initiatives offer a path for the left to organize around working class demands without getting sucked into the depressive vortex of democratic machinery and a partisan culture war. As a report recently published by the Center for Work and Democracy at Arizona State University shows, egalitarian initiatives pass at a 60% clip and redistributive ones pass at an astounding 75% rate. With results like these, many on the left are increasingly attracted to the initiative process as a tactical path forward. Unfortunately, this interest has been roused at a moment when the initiative process is under concerted attack from the right. By increasing the number of petition signatures needed, making the signature gathering process stricter, or otherwise raising the threshold for making the ballot, many states are trying to clamp down on citizens' initiatives. In many places, the initiative process is approaching Sisyphean levels of difficulty, irresistible as a means of directly pushing a progressive agenda, but so bogged down by rule changes and oversight by hostile bureaucracies as to ultimately prove impossible.
Pause. Do you know the story of Sisyphus?
No.
Okay, Sisyphus is the guy pushing a boulder up a hill.
Ah.
Yeah, that's Sisyphus. So Sisyphean levels of difficulty. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense. All right.
Sure.
Thank you for that.
Greek.
Listening to you every day.
Greek.
The example of Arizona is instructive here. Arizona is in numerous ways a bellwether state. From aggressive immigration policy to school choice, Arizonans seemed cursed to preview nationwide political developments in our own perverse laboratory of democracy. Such is the case with 2020's Proposition 208, an initiative to fund direly under-resourced schools by taxing the rich. The measure followed years of organizing work that began with the historical 2018 Arizona teacher strike, part of the national Red for Ed movement. Prop 208 was everything the left could want from a ballot initiative, a tax on wealthy individuals that will go to public schools, backed by one of the largest and best organized labor upsurges in recent memory. And it was popular. Even in the pandemic year, when the typical ground game for this kind of campaign was impossible, Prop 208 passed by a safe margin. At the same time, California voters rejected a very similar measure in Prop 15. Against the caricature of the state as a libertarian bastion, Arizona was ready to tax the rich.
So, back up a little. So essentially, California voters didn't want it because, like, they don't want state initiatives. Is that what they're saying? It seems like that.
Yeah.
Okay, but like Arizona's willing to because libertarian and states can do stuff.
Right, which is interesting because I think the point is Arizona is a red state.
Yeah. Generally.
Yeah, generally, although it's kind of
purple, but you know,
you know, so they could be more of a flip flop. But for this, it passed. Whereas in California, which is they say blue, but you know,
right? But there's too many rich folk there.
Too many rich folks, and many rich folks who are probably Republican.
Yeah.
So I think that's the difference here. That's slightly, you know. So So I think that, but I think it's very interesting that, California is known as a blue state, but the argument I think, the authors of this article are making kind of, I think they're going to get into that. So let me continue in what they're saying. Despite its promise, or perhaps because of it, Prop 208 didn't last long. The year after voters approved 208, the state legislature dropped down tax brackets to nullify its effects. The year after that, the state Supreme Court declared the initiative unconstitutional. The effects of these developments have been politically devastating. Rather than being enraged at the flouting of democracy at the state capitol, Arizonans have greeted the gutting of 208 with resignation and demobilization. After the high water mark in 2018, teachers' public image suffered during the COVID-19 pandemic, and now the signature accomplishment of the years of knocking doors has been erased. In most parts of the country with an initiative process, ballot initiatives offer a bright spot in an otherwise depressing political vista. The same is true in Arizona, where debt relief and in-state tuition for DACA students prevailed this November. But the Grand Canyon State offers a cautionary tale for any campaign that seeks to redistribute money and resources from the 1% to the majority. The rich, many will be unsurprised to hear, have better tax lawyers than most. They can spend money on the front end to stifle redistributive efforts, mostly in the form of television ads and lawsuits against initiative campaigns, as they can almost never marshal ground games, but they can also spend on the back end to chip away or, in the case of Prop 218, completely gut any tax policy they don't like. They are well organized, they have the necessary connections, and they won't stop until they get what they want. David does indeed sometimes win, as Marshall Gaines has reminded us, but it is a lot harder when he plays by Goliath's rules, and Goliath doesn't mess around when you come for his money. Recently, Massachusetts passed the Fair Share Amendment, a remarkable similar initiative to Arizona's Prop 208. It creates a 4% tax on annual income over $1 million to fund public education, transportation, and infrastructure repair. As in Arizona, the initiative was backed solidly by organized labor, and it passed with precisely the same majority of 52%. As also with Prop 208, the opposition had a difficult time messaging, as most Massachusetts residents do not earn over $1 million a year. The Massachusetts Teacher Association is right to celebrate the victory as a reason for profound hope, as the Arizona Education Association did with Prop 208. But the lesson from Arizona is that the true victory will be in defending the Fair Share Amendment, not just in winning it. Strip away the partisan identifications and voters will overwhelmingly choose to redistribute wealth. But often the confusing and veiled machinations of state legislatures can swiftly undermine such choices unless there is sustained pressure on legislators. I think that's a key point, and I think we'll talk about that in a minute.
Machinations. Another good word.
Ballot initiatives can pass policies that politicians can or won't, but on their own, there are no silver bullet. The more impact an initiative has in rebalancing resources and power, the more likely it is to face the coordinated efforts of the state legislature, judiciary, and Chamber of Commerce. Initiative campaigns that propose redistributing wealth must therefore be prepared to defend their policy before, during, and after it wins at the ballot. For the unions and community organizations that back the Fair Share Amendment, then, the real victory will be in getting the vote to stick, and that will require returning to the roots of organizing, strategic social disruption that makes leaving the Fair Share Amendment alone the more attractive option to the powers that be.
Would that include things like strikes, you think?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Gotcha. So
yes.
Here's my, not to like derail too, I mean, this is about ballot initiatives. The issue is getting things on ballot initiatives. Every state's going to be different because like it's also, you have to wait for a ballot.
Right.
You know, so like that to me is also part of the problem. I mean, you know, I don't see why. I mean, me personally, this goes along with like election reform in general, especially with ballot initiatives, which this is also goes part and parcel with that like I think you need to fix a lot of that structure before it's as viable as I wish it was, if that makes sense. Like, you need to fix the structure of, like, we should be able to have a ballot initiative whenever the fuck we want, because it's what the fucking people should fucking decide, you know? And as long as you can make voting for those ballot initiatives easy and available and accessible, it shouldn't be a problem. I mean, American Idol seemed to fucking make this work, so, you know.
Here's the thing with this, though, and we had the discussion on Monday night when we were, I think, talking about this in relation to other things. You know, Massachusetts passed a ballot initiative regarding a variation, I'm going to say, of Medicare for All, which Sabby has talked about in her stream. There are people who I think are very much against state-supported Medicare for All for obvious reasons in this article as it describes here. Is obviously going to come under a lot more scrutiny, is obviously going to come at a lot more fighting in terms of, you know, and I think I loved how this article kind of lays it out. It's like the oligarchs do not want to get rid of their money. So they're going to do everything that they can to stop it. And even if it passes, you know, and I think this was the argument that I made, not argument, but this is what I was talking about with you privately. And we see this all the time, especially like with legislation, is that like take Biden, for example, you know, people, you know, went to bat for him and voted him in. And then once he was voted in, you know, people just kind of, okay, we're done and we're going home. And now look at the shit of what he's doing right now, you know? So Roger's in the chat. What's up, Roger? Yes, we're talking about the article that you tagged me in. So please, if you have anything to add, please let us know in the chat. But, you know, but I think the article makes it clear, you know, and that's the key that I think we don't talk about on the left regarding organizing. It's that I made this example, again, not bad, not a good example, but it's like when you have a baby, you know, when you have the baby, you don't just leave it out into the wolves to fend for itself. You gotta watch over it, protect it, you know, you gotta stay on it, you know, like to make sure that baby thrives and lives in accordance and grows in accordance to how it should be. Same thing with legislation that's passed, or you can argue, same thing that you should be doing with politicians.
I also think actively using whatever power you have to take more power, also good. Because, like, I don't think we have the proper tools as a proletariat to, like, deal with these sort of things, especially when there's problems with those specific, like, actions, you know? So...
One of the pros I can say for ballot initiatives is on the state level. And generally, or even on the local level, like, depending on what it is. Like, for example... Like for me, and I talked about Empower Ed, the organization that I'm a part of yesterday. I know people on the State Board of Ed personally.
Yeah.
In fact, one of the new members of the State Board of Education was in Empower Ed, and I worked with him for the last couple of years. So basically, when he won his seat, you know, a few weeks ago, he had his watch party. I went to it, and I told him, I'm not going to be easy on you, you know, now that he's on the other side of the table where I would give my, you know, where I give my, my data collection as far as talking about issues within the education DC field in DC, you know, he's been with me having those debates. Now he's on the other side of the table, and now he has to listen to me in that role. But I have personal connection with him. I can talk to him about these issues. On the federal level, you have no connection with the people that you voted in.
Yeah.
You know, once they're in, they're trapped in that Congress bubble. You have no connection with them at all. And even like if they come to visit a part of their constituency, like, you know, you still don't have any access to them. So the benefit of ballot initiatives to me is that because they're run on the state level, number one, they're a lot more they're easier to organize around certain issues. You have, and I think it also forces people to connect with their local politics, which I think is very lacking. And I think that's another issue we don't necessarily talk about on the left or in general. We're so hyper-focused on what happens on the federal level, but we don't even know who our city councilman people are. Or we don't even know who's on our school board on a local level. We don't care about that, but we care about Biden and Trump. You know, ultimately, the people that live in your city and town have the most direct influence of what's happening in your life, and you should know who those people are. So if anything, like ballot initiatives forces people to kind of hunker down into what's happening personally in their state. And it's easier to organize around those issues. And the argument that I can make is, especially for like ballot initiatives such as, you know, Medicare for All or like a free minimum wage, as I said, once you get those in, you got to stay on it. You can't just be like, oh, we won and go home. Like you have to make sure, because, you know, like I'll also say this as an anecdote. We had a ballot initiative for increasing minimum wage for tip workers. I think it was back in 2017 in DC. At that time, I think it passed by 50, it was in the 50%. So just barely got the majority. And then the city council repealed that. So we didn't get it. But it got on the ballot again this year. And obviously due to the pandemic, you know, whatever else, you know, I'm sure people would have felt more sympathetic, you know, to tip workers now. Like, I didn't expect, you know, for it to pass, honestly, but it won by a bigger margin this time around, you know? And now, from what I understand, the mayor said in a tweet, like, oh, I'm happy that this passed, but I need to talk to, essentially, she said, I don't remember the exact tweet, but basically she was like, oh, I need to talk to the restaurant lobby. So that was kind of like, okay, you're trying to pull some shit again, you know? So point that I'm making is, as the article says, when regarding ballot initiatives, it's a great organization tool to kind of elevate a lot of these progressive policies. But once you do, you have to be on it, as the article says, before, during, and after it passes. Like, don't go to sleep on it, because, you know, obviously, especially when you're trying to redistribute wealth, you know, people who are making money do not want to give that up, and they will fight you for it. So I think, again, like, is it perfect? No. And I will say this, like, should we continue to fight for progressive policies on the federal level? Absolutely. And, you know, and I think we definitely should continue to do that. That being said, right now we're in a lame duck Congress. We have new leadership who is extremely hostile to progressive policies. Ro Khanna basically said regarding using Medicare for All, for example, there is no way that Medicare for All is going to pass at all. And even if it did, with Biden in office right now, he said that he would veto it. So right now, we're kind of stalled here. So we need to look at other strategies in order for us to get, if at minimum, elevate the conversation. I'm talking about Medicare for All specifically. Like, we need to regroup and kind of reconnect on the local and state levels. elevate these issues again. And I think ballot initiatives, again, they're not perfect. And I'm not saying that, like, we should look to that only, but it's just one tool in the midst of other tools that we should have access to in order to elevate these progressive policies that we want.
I mean, I think with one of our favorites, Ture, organizing what we're for, I think, there's definitely talk among the indie space of solutions for things.
Right.
And I think that, like, using the power that's available to you now, right, which is like organizing for, let's say, ballot initiatives, and I don't even think it has to be, like, there is an argument that M for All shouldn't be done at the state level. I do think there is some points there that because of how it can be funded and, state boundary laws, stuff like that, as far as business is concerned, like, I think there's some truth to that could be dealt with in both scenarios. Like, I'm not saying that that's, not the case either, but like case by case basis, some of that, like, may not be great state level, but I think state level gaining the power to say something, or things like election integrity, or, better voting situations in that state, I think that's like organizing for those initiatives, because essentially, like, there's nothing necessarily, I don't know the like specifics on how to do any of that as far as like how to get something to be a ballot initiative, but and state by state it's going to be different.
Right, but I think the conversation should be had. And again, we shouldn't rely on that alone. As I said,
yeah.
And I think Roger said he's gonna hit us up with something. But
okay.
But it's a tool out of many as far as organization that we should look into. And I think especially right now, within the next couple of years, as I said, right now, we're in a position where we need to regroup and kind of figure out strategy, which we don't do on the left at all.
I also want the left.
It's more like the idea of mobilization, like, which is fine. But what is that mobilization? What is the umbrella thing as far as the organization that we should be looking towards?
And I think
just having a one-off thing is not. It's not going to necessarily be good if it's leading towards something else.
I've also said we need to be creative here with solutions on, like, especially with, like, I think the best case scenario is getting as many ballot initiatives as possible on the next ballot. So, like, what do you need to do? Like, what needs to be there? What could you sneak through, that secretly could, like, help things, Like, to me, that's the thing where it's like, if you can get the proletariat to understand why this is good, or, things like being able to vote out politicians, like sneaking little stuff that, like, could get through somewhere,
Right.
So, and talking amongst I think this is also why having your, like, values and, like, what you actually want to see happen that could help you or others, group up among people that are for that issue, so that you can talk amongst yourselves as openly as possible, so that you can get, like, things actually accomplished. I think that's the thing that we're seeing, that it's like awareness isn't the issue anymore on almost any issue. People are aware. Now it's put a solution in their face that they'll choose. So, speaking of choices, you brought some video evidence here, right?
So this premiered today. So this was on Rising this morning. So Tesla and Figaro, who I think many of you know, stopped by the Rising Studios with Bree and Robbie today, and they talked about really, suave. So they talked about how the squad basically just dropped the knees to Hakeem Jeffries, and he essentially won the House Minority Leadership unanimously. So that's what. So just to give context, this is what they were talking about. But she does mention, but there's key parts, I think, in terms of thinking in terms of the local level now. I think that kind of where my argument is coming from, that we need to stop focusing so much on the federal, and looking more to the local level. So I do want to play that part of the clip, because I think that it also does relate to ballot initiatives or in kind of thinking about that too.
Okay.
So if you don't mind playing it, at least that part.
We've all been alluding to this, but there was a moment 2 years ago that was described as the force the vote moment, where Democrats were in the same position Republicans are in now, where because the majority was so narrow and because you need 218 votes to confirm a speaker, the handful of squad members, the 4 to 8 of them, depending on how you count, had the power to actually hold up confirming Nancy Pelosi as Speaker of the House in exchange for any number of concessions, including committee appointments. We saw people like Katie Porter, who's been a very effective advocate for kind of populist economic policies, taxes on the rich, et cetera, get pushed out of the Financial Services Committee. They could have demanded all kinds of things, including a floor vote on Medicare for all, which was something that the progressives were talking about at the time. And they simply did not. They simply did not. And now when I have interviewed various progressives like Ro Khanna about whether or not they look back and have regrets, or why it is that Hakeem Jeffries is now in a position where he isn't being challenged by any progressives for leadership, they're giving the same excuse they gave 2 years ago, which is that just nobody's ready. We haven't prepared. We haven't had anybody positioning themselves in this way. And I wonder what you make of that. At a certain point, should progressives be looking to these people as leaders? At what point does it seem like almost like a planned ineptitude versus making genuine mistakes? Because they've had a lot of time to plan at this point.
Yeah, let's just be clear. This is a con game. I'll go ahead and say it. It's a con game. Bottom line, progressives love talking about Democrats and moderates and, oh, you Democrats, oh, you neoliberals, you don't get it, you're just blinded. No, so are you progressives. It is a con game. They have showed you time and time again that it's been all about funneling your money up and selling you a dream. My problem is not that I don't understand strategy. I run a strategic communications firm. I get strategy. I understand that things take time. My problem is, Bree, that they went out and lied to these people. They went out and lied to the progressive movement. They lied to folks who were poor, middle class, working class, and promised them a dream. I cannot stand a voluntary lie, whether that's Biden, who volunteered to pass to have the back of black people that nobody asked him to do, whether it is the progressives, Bernard Sanders, and everybody else that had people crying in the stands, giving their last $2, whether it is on the Trump side of selling people on hopes and dreams of some magical wall that would be paid for by Mexico. I cannot stand the volunteer lie. These people know exactly what they're doing. They're worse than the moderates, because you're taking the last $2 from the poor and working class, knowing damn well that once you get in the office, you're going to flip the script. And that's the problem that I have. Why not run on the truth? Why not run on the fact that saying, hey, we're going to get in, it's going to take us time. But they did not do that. They sold a hope and dream and a con game. And that is why I have such an issue with the progressive movement.
Time to play with.
I mean, why not? That is the question. What are they thinking? Is it are they insincere when they say they're committed to these things? Is it it's all about just raising money and then they don't particularly care about supporting a cause, or they would say they're being more strategic than you, right? That they have some master plan that you're not privy to, or that they have a long-term plan, or they just
can't defeat,
or they don't know what they've given up hope Pelosi, that it can work.
Yeah, crap. That's much, but it's no master plan. This is no rubbing of the hands. Oh, I got some master plan. The plan is the con game. Bottom line. This is why I keep trying to tell people it is important that you get involved on the local and the state level. As far as Congress, it's over with. It's a wrap. Get local and state leadership When I say local, I'm talking about city commissioners that have executive power to make the decisions, that can make effective change right now in your city. Get on board with folks who are running for state house, a state rep, state senate, that you have a little bit more access to, because as far as Congress is concerned, I think we're behind the ball, and it's too far gone to right the ship. Unless you have that local leadership that is putting pressure on those folks in Congress that say either you do or else, or we're going to make sure that you lose, nothing will ever change. The only thing that a politician's fear is the ability to lose their seat, period.
Yeah.
Why is she wearing her Power Ranger uniform though? That's what I want to know. You know.
Also, you can't be playing with the screen. So
I can be.
BTS,
They
you
hear
can,
us.
but BTS, you can't be playing with your new
Who says
toys.
You're not my real dad. Oh.
But anyway, point that Tesla brought here, I think is very apparent. Like, we talk about strategy a lot, and obviously we know the oligarchs have their strategy planned out to attack us. And we need to develop our own in terms of how we, like, again, we made this case with the federal student loan debt. Like, we knew, and this was the issue that we had with Mike Figueredo, like, we knew that it's going to get blocked. You know, wherever he used the Higher Education Act or wherever he used the HEROES Act, that obviously are conservative federal judges that were going to block it. So if you're going to attack your enemy, why not attack them with the best possible shot of success? You know, especially if you know what they're up to, you know? So I think, especially on the left, we need to kind of develop that same discipline in terms of we know who our enemies are. So the best thing we need to think about now is what do we need to do in order to kind of combat the games that they're going to play with us and not act surprised when they're like, oh, like, but we didn't know, like, they're going to have all this money and, like, they're going to get all their lawyers to attack this legislation and tank it. Like, we know that's what they're going to do. So if you know that, be prepared for that and stand up to it. And I think just overall, I think in regards to ballot initiatives, I think that's key. But I think you can make that case for anything in regard to politics. Like, you're not done, especially when, if by the grace of God, it gets voted in. You know, like, you still have to work at it because they're going to chip away at it to try to get rid of it or undermine it so that, you know, it's a lesser value than what you intended it to be. And so, like I said, I think it's a way to kind of have people focus on local and state politics, but it can be a way as an organizational tool to elevate those issues on a federal level and having the backing of your state representatives to be like, look, this is what we're doing and people are happy. Why the fuck are you not doing this on the federal level?
Yeah.
You know? So that's but I think, again, it's a tool, one tool of many that we need to use.
Well, I think that's the thing for me where it's like, we're in a fight, correct?
Right.
At what point do you start looking for weapons? You got to find some stuff to use.
Right.
Like, find the tools that you can actually work with. You know?
So, to people who are knocking ballot initiatives, I get the arguments against them. But, like, again, if you're looking at tools in the toolbox, you know, like, you're not going to knock a hammer because it doesn't screw a nail. It has a certain job and a certain purpose. And you have to know how to use it effectively and use all the tools in your toolbox effectively to get the maximum output from your case. So, you know, so my counter to people who kind of knock ballot initiatives, or I think especially thinking in terms of like nothing can work on the state level, you know, I think again, along with that, we need to talk about like what organizing actually is, because I don't think we often talk about that enough. But then, like, because as Heslin said, there's strategy involved, which we don't often think about. Like we don't think long term. We just think in terms of, oh, like we're just gonna, do this thing and pray and hope that it works out. And then we get shocked and then we get knocked down easily, and it demoralizes people. Like, not to say that's not going to happen, but you got to be prepared for that. And I wouldn't say it's a fight; it's a straight up war on these streets.
Well, I think people with organizing have a very unusual thing where it's like organizing to pressure a politician, right? Is not, to me, like, there's very specific use cases, right? But it's not like awareness isn't the issue in that regard. I don't think. I think the politicians know. I think the people know, right? I think the thing to do is, like, first of all, we got to have better communication. Like, that's going to be a thing that we just need to do, especially on these issues of what we're doing. What can we do? While also supporting everyone to keep doing that, because mutual aid is, like, also needed. And I think,
and again, to your point, it's easier to talk to representatives on the state level.
Yeah.
Because you have better access to them than you do to politicians on the federal, So again, that's where ballot initiatives can make an impact, in that regard. So actually I was just checking, and Benjamin Case is a researcher, but he as an organizer, and so he does this. So I'm actually going to contact him to see if we can have him on to talk more about this.
Okay.
Because I think, again, this is a worthwhile discussion to have. But we need some experts to kind of talk about, I think, this, but in terms of how to strategize and organize effectively, so that, if we ever have a forced to vote moment again,
like, it needs to be done now. Like,
right. We need to prepare for it right now. Like, we should be.
We got to think a couple of steps ahead, I feel like, is what you're saying. Speaking of a couple of steps ahead, sometimes they throw you curveballs. So I brought a story with us this evening that, yes, I know Kalinske covered it, but we're going to do better. So I doubt he even found this in Common Dreams. He probably found it on, like, I don't know, Yahoo News. What do you think Kyle uses? Ask Jeeves still, probably. He's trying to MapQuest this shit. You know what I mean? Like, that's where he's getting his directions. But this button, there we go. So, scientists revive zombie virus after 50,000 years trapped in Siberian permafrost. Researchers documented 13, lucky number, never before seen viruses that have been lying dormant, frozen in thick ice over tens of thousands of years. You looking forward to this, Collin? You've been ready for this movie, part of the movie?
Sure.
I hope you brought popcorn, So, as our world continues to warm up, vast areas of permafrost are rapidly melting, releasing material that's been trapped for up to 1 million years. This includes uncountable numbers of microbes that have been lying dormant for hundreds of millennia. To study these emerging microbes, scientists from the French National Center for Scientific Research have now revived a number of these zombie Whoa, back up. Why are we reviving these things? First off,
right?
Like, let those motherfuckers sleep, dog. Like, what are you doing? That's like, God, they're gonna make Jurassic Park, Collin. They're fucking did they not watch the movie?
Right.
Did they not
watch?
watch?
Said they already made this movie. I'm sure people are thinking of Jurassic Park.
like any of these. Like there's like 9 movies that are like, this is the plot. Like Cusack's gotta find the like, it's, oh God. Who's the one in Jurassic Park that's like laying down? The classic like, crap, I can't remember his name. People know who I'm talking about. Like, I forget. No, I can't remember. He's weird. He's the weird one. It frustrates me that I can't think of it. It'll come to me in a second.
Sure.
So he's
Continue.
also in Hunger Games, I think. I'll think about it. But so
if you know in the chat, say it.
yeah. Goldblum. Someone got it. Thank you.
There you go. Thanks, Rick.
Thank you. You saved me from another bout of ADHD rabbit holing. But so they revived them, a number, right, from the Siberian permafrost. Oh, it's gotta be Russian viruses, Collin. It's like all the fucking bullshit in one article. Of course Kyle covered this. Of course he did. Like,
and to give you an update, he did get it from Common Dreams too. So
damn it. Damn you, Kyle. So including one thought to be nearly 50,000 years old, a record age for a frozen virus returning to a state capable of infecting other organs. Bro, put it back to sleep. Like, the thing is killed with fire. Use fire. Like, try that first. You know? Like, oh God. What do you want the prehistoric virus to do? What do you want the virus to do, Collin?
Kill off our government leaders. That's what I want.
Yeah, it only attacks people who wear flag lapels. Is that what it is?
Yes.
Like, goddamn, virus, you specific as shit. I'm trying to think of a good one. I definitely think it turns people to lizard people. That's what it has to do. It's prehistoric. You got to go that way. It's all lizard people, you know. Or that's the only people it affects is lizard people. Then all the symptoms start from there, you know. Like, they got to sit on a rock in the sun. Like, Nancy be out there and shit trying to warm her blood. Anyway, I'm just making another movie. But so yeah, the team behind the study, led by microbiologist Jean-Marie, says these ancient viruses are potentially a significant threat to public health, and further study needs to be done to assess the danger that these infectious agents could pose as the permafrost melts. The researchers warned it may just be the tip of the iceberg. Bro, we're talking about Alien now. That's what we're talking about. We made it to Alien. You want to do research on it, so let's just, like, I don't know, leave it in a room full of weird eggs and see what happens. Like, that's what, oh God. Oh, Collin, we're going to be the first ones. The fat guy and the black dude are the first ones to die. All right? Like, we just are. We're not allowed to do that. Oh, get me off this ride, Collin. Oh God, even at least Vox is like gonna talk about some of this shit, you know. So they got a story about it.
In December 2016, a remote community in Siberia experienced.
This is in 2016. This isn't the first time we've dealt with these prehistoric viruses. Would you like to see what they do?
Experienced a mysterious outbreak. 90 people were hospitalized and a 12-year-old boy died. Soon, Russian officials identified what had killed him: the deadly infectious disease anthrax. The outbreak had started among reindeer. To contain the spread, they burned over 2,000 reindeer carcasses. The strange thing was, there hadn't been an anthrax outbreak in the area for more than 70 years. So, to figure out where it came from, scientists started looking underground. In the coldest parts of the world, there's a layer of the Earth that stays frozen all year. Every summer, the soil above it thaws. But this deeper layer stays hard as rock. This is permafrost. Most permafrost is here, in the northern hemisphere around the Arctic. And because it never thaws, permafrost acts kind of like the freezer in your kitchen. When plants and animals here die, they don't actually decompose. Instead, they become preserved in the frozen earth like a time capsule. And it's been that way for thousands of years. But that's changing. Today, humans are burning carbon and making the atmosphere warmer. And that's causing the permafrost to thaw and shrink. By 2100, only these areas will still have any permafrost. And that's causing some problems. When permafrost melts, the land above it becomes unstable, which can lead to landslides. Man-made structures start to fall apart as the ground underneath them collapses. And dead plants and animals that had been frozen for years are starting to thaw out. As they're exposed to air and bacteria, this organic material starts to decompose. That releases greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide and methane. But that's not all it releases. In Siberia, scientists think that the anthrax outbreak came from a long-dead reindeer carcass that thawed out along with the permafrost. Anthrax spores from the carcass would have spread across the area and infected reindeer grazing nearby. And it's not just anthrax. Scientists worry that as permafrost melts, it could unearth all sorts of diseases we thought we had under control. 35 million people live around permafrost. But the carbon released as permafrost melts will accelerate the impacts of climate change everywhere: rising seas, heat waves, droughts in some places, and floods in others. And now we can add one more thing to that list: diseases we thought we conquered.
Well, we're fucked. We're fucked.
We're fucked.
We're fucked.
So, not sure if Kyle went into that, but and actually that's a good segue into my last segment. But no, but I think, but yeah, it makes sense. In terms of now that playing that and having some context, like
yes.
This is so in this context, it makes sense that they actually need to kind of do this.
Oh yeah, it's Call of Duty Frozen Zombies edition. Yes.
Right. But because we're kind of doing it on our own volition, given climate change. So it's either that we try and figure this out or have it come about and we don't know what's going on. So I think given that context, that it makes sense why we got to kind of know what else, if that has potential, like with anthrax, like what other potential diseases or spores, whatever you want to call it, might be like in a dead asleep that with climate change might, exacerbate, now. So yeah, it makes sense, but it's still kind of, it's funny to think about in a sense, but at the same time, it's kind of like alarming that, this is possible.
Yes. I mean, we kind of should have seen it coming, honestly. Like,
I don't think
we saw the last season of Game of Thrones. We realized, the fucking shit up there in the north is going to have some crazy fucking snow walkers in it, and you're not going to know what to do. All right? Like, you ever fight a mammoth? Huh? No. It's hard. Like, we built brains to be better than that. Like, that's how it happened. Like, it's crazy. Like, you gotta learn how to make a spear, get a little loincloth. It's weird. But this article does have a little bit more to it. Where is this? So one corner of the northern hemisphere is underlain by permanently frozen ground, right? The permafrost. Due to climate warming, the permafrost is releasing organic matter frozen up to 1 million years, right? So part of the organic matter also consists of revived cellular microbes, right? As well as viruses that remain dormant since prehistorical times. So we're talking about fungi. We're talking about, you know, bacteria, that kind of stuff, you know, up to like a unicellular level. We're talking about amoebas, you know, which we already have brain-eating versions of those. So, you know, it might be a bit of an issue coming up. Like,
Right.
Especially when you think about it, the stuff that would be melting first, Collin, is where the most humans are.
Right.
Like, we're not where it's like, we don't live where it stays that frozen forever.
Right.
You know, we have a few, but like the stuff where it's melting is going to be stuff where like humans might be closer to, you know?
Right.
So that's going to be rough time when, you know, the old god monsters come out of the ground. But a 48,500-year-old virus has been revived from Siberian permafrost. 7 viruses from the Siberian permafrost have been revived and replicated themselves in the lab, including the oldest revived so far. So, you know, the vampire shit's in here too. Like, it's like all the fucking movies. Like, we should not be doing that. So, according to Global News, in 2014, the same researchers unearthed a 30,000-year-old virus trapped in permafrost. The BBC reported the discovery was groundbreaking because, after all that time, the virus was still able to infect organisms, but now they've beaten their own record by reviving a virus that is 48,000 years old. If the authors were indeed isolating live viruses from ancient permafrost, it is likely that even smaller, simpler mammalian viruses would also survive frozen for eons. Virologist Eric Dewart from the University of California told New Scientist. So, okay, I've seen this movie and it didn't end well. And seriously, what's the name again? Pandora virus? The revived virus has been given the name Pandora virus Yodoma, which acknowledges its size and the type of permafrost soil it was found in. Yeah. So,
this is legit scary, honestly.
Yeah, the fact that they revived it, don't revive it.
Right, but at the same time, we are reviving it.
Yes, and that's like, okay, so let's say France is doing okay and like not doing bad ones. You know, but what about all the other places?
Right. I know you're making the argument like, yeah, like these are trapped in like the Arctic Circle, but there's no telling. We don't know how they respond, you know, like once they're unfrozen and they get out like into our air essentially, or whatever, or our animals or our food, and like if it spreads among people and then it just kind of spreads from there. So we don't know the potential of what these zombie viruses, ancient viruses can do. So in a way, I kind of understand why they need to unearth them, to kind of see what the reaction of what they will what can happen to them given our modern environment now. But as I said, you know, like we're already doing that given climate change. And I guess more of a reason why we need to take climate change seriously, you know, for reasons like this. You know, we don't know how it's going to affect human beings now, or our animals, or our crops. So,
oh God, I didn't even think about that. It's all the things. It's all the things. It's food supply, fucking viral bullshit.
Right.
And like,
it's like, so I probably shouldn't say this on YouTube, but think of coronavirus, probably that and worse.
Oh, there's so many terrible movie viruses. There was one recently that like where the thing would it was like an alien virus thing that had like it controlled a whole area of like Nebraska or something like that, and like everything was, it combined everything into things, and it was like a fungal thing. Super weird. Someone will tell me what the name of it is in chat, I'm sure.
Yeah,
I forget who's in it, some lady, but yeah, I mean,
Jesus Christ,
we're fucked.
Yeah,
basically.
so,
Yes.
Speaking of fucked,
well, before we go on to our last segment, I do want to shout Roger, and he did send some information in the chat regarding our BI segment that I do want to
I'll pull it
share
up for you.
So he sent in 3 parts.
Yes, I'm trying to find the first one.
So
hits in the jaw. That's what I got.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So he says, anything that hits the powerful in the jaw, taxing rich, single payer, public banks, shifting ownership of companies to workers, term limits, forcing politicians to only take small dollars, should be amendments.
Yep, and then the next one is here.
Yep. If you unfortunately live in Arizona, ID is what?
Idaho.
Which state is ID? Idaho, Maine, Wyoming, Utah, and Washington State that only allows voters to pass repeal state laws using the BI and veto referendum processes, but not amend state constitution, then stretch the powers of veto referendum, meaning when the state weakens, alters, or repeals any law voters pass, use VRs to repeal their repeal of your original initiative, snapping your new law back into place.
So that's how you do it. You repeal the repeal of the repeal. Got it.
Right. So there's more. You said before how you pay for these programs at state level like single payer. You do it with chartering public banks to create the surpluses needed in your economy without raising or creating new taxes.
Okay, and is there specifics on that? You can
pass an amendment using the BI process that gives voters the ability to nullify unpopular rulings by the state courts that will allow you to put forth future BI amendments to nullify each unpopular ruling.
Okay. I think that's the last one so far.
Yeah. I think that might be it.
Yeah, I was going to tell him. Yeah, I mean, if you're welcome to come on, Roger, and we'll do a whole segment if you want. If not, send Collin.
I think it's worth like a whole stream, on ballot initiative. So I think, Roger, if you're interested, let us know. We'll get you on.
Yeah,
but I think it might be important, given, I know he talks about ballot initiatives all the time. He might as well have the platform to talk about it more for us.
Well, and next week,
it's a little
to tease a little, which we need to check back in before next week, but coming on the show I hope is none other than Sabrina Salvati, and I think she might be good to talk about it as well. So we'll see how that goes. That should be fun. I think that's next week, right?
Roger had, I think Roger had another one way before that. I'll read it from here. So he said, if you have the right to amend your state constitution using BIs, skip using it to pass laws, use it to ratify amendments instead. So I think that was the last one.
This one. And then if you use BIs to pass laws, then the government can weaken, repeal, or alter without asking you, unlike they would have if it was an amendment. Okay. Yeah, I think sending us some info on Twitter there, Roger, would also be super useful. We got both our handles there on these little nameplates you see, or you can go to @GetIndieNews on Twitter. Hit that up.
Roger tags me and everything, so I'm sure he will send this to me.
Yeah, he knows you.
So thank you, Roger. And yeah, like I said, we definitely probably should have you on the show at some point. So if you're interested, let us know and we'll get you on, talk more about this. But speaking of climate change, picking an appropriate segue.
Yeah.
So our boy Biden, funny enough that this is not getting enough information. Remember how he was like anti-fracking, and then he was?
Yes.
Well, his administration quietly approves a huge Texas oil export project. So this is comes from the Texas Tribune, written by Dylan Badur, where he says the Seaport Oil Terminal would be 30 miles off the Texas coast and is one of four proposed offshore terminals designed to dramatically expand the U.S. oil import capacity. So, buddy.
Money.
So, there we go.
There it goes.
The Biden administration has approved plans to build the nation's largest oil export terminal off the Gulf Coast of Texas, which will add 2 million barrels per day to U.S. oil export capacity. The approval by the Department of Transportation's Maritime Administration was filed in the Federal Register on Monday without any public announcement, a day after the United Nations Annual Climate Conference wrapped up in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt. So that was the COP conference that you talked about 2 weeks ago. Earthworks, an environmental nonprofit, spotted the filing and publicized approval of the Seaport Oil Terminal on Tuesday. President Biden cannot lead on combating climate change, protecting public health, or advocating for environmental justice, while simultaneously allowing fossil fuel companies to lock in decades of fossil fuel extraction, the group's senior policy advocate Kelsey Crane said in a statement. In its 94-page decision, the Maritime Administration wrote, the construction and operation of the port is in the national interest because the project will benefit employment, economic growth, and U.S. energy infrastructure resilience and security. The port will provide a reliable source of crude oil to U.S. allies in the event of market disruption. The administration's move marked a major step forward for the export sector, which has grown rapidly since the U.S. began to allow crude sales abroad in 2015, the same year that the U.S. helped broker the Paris Climate Accord that called for dramatic reductions in global fossil fuel emissions. The offshore oil export terminal, the first to be approved of four proposed along Texas's Gulf Coast, will enable continued growth in the U.S. shale oil production and in global consumption, leading a substantial step back to the White House goals for drastic cuts in carbon emissions by year 2030. President Biden has renewed United States leadership in the fight against climate change, the White House said ahead of the UN National Climate Conference in Egypt this month. The president is delivering on his day one promises, positioning the United States to achieve our ambitious climate goals. In July, the Maritime Administration 890-page impact statement said oil process at the Seaport Oil Terminal will create greenhouse gas emissions equal to 233 million tons of carbon dioxide per year, about 4% total 2020 U.S. emissions. Approval of Seaport Oil Terminal off the coast of Freeport, about 50 miles south of Galveston, gave its corporate developers, Enterprise and Enbridge, a clear lead in the race to build the first new offshore export terminal in the Gulf. It was the agency's first endorsement and followed a 3-year review process. According to James Coleman, who teaches energy law at Southern Methodist University in Texas, the exports terminal approval represents hands-off approach the Biden administration has adopted towards oil infrastructure projects since winning the White House on promises to block pipeline expansions. So I guess instead of pipelines, we're going to get our oil from the ocean instead. I guess. Anyway.
What kind of ocean drilling again? What's that ocean drilling he's talking about wanting to do? Especially in the Gulf? What's that he's trying to repeal? The deep water stuff? Is that what what I heard?
Yeah.
So the stuff on the stuff that South Park literally had BP apologize for. We're talking about that. We're talking about that stuff. like the Deepwater Horizon shit. Again, we've seen this movie. It's called The Deep. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, oh God, like the 90s movies need to stop like ruining our lives. Right? Yeah. Anyway, you have more, right?
Yeah, I do. They keep asking the oil industry to expand its production and build more refineries, and yet they are saying we need to phase out fossil fuels, Coleman said. What they said seems contradictory. You think?
Yeah.
The Environment Protection Agency issued its approval on the project last month, also without a public announcement, prompting Gulf coal activists to stage a protest in Washington, D.C. that ended in 4 arrests last week. I actually did not know that. I'm extremely disappointed, said Melanie Oldman, founder of Citizens for Clean Air and Clean Water in Brazoria County, where the project is proposed. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg and President Biden have chosen not to be climate change leaders. The EPA has not responded to repeated requests for comment. While its October 7th endorsement of the new terminal outlined concerns over climate change and environmental justice, it did not explain why the agency opted to approve this project. Last week, they were in Egypt telling the world that now is the time for climate action. This week, they're locking us into a climate-wrecking monstrosity for at least a generation, said Jeffrey Jabicki, Deputy Director of Texas Campaign for the Environment. According to the Maritime Administration, the project will expand a Houston area terminal opened by Enterprise and connected to a new 140-acre offshore facility near Freeport with 4.8 billion barrels of storage capacity. From there, 2 36-inch underwater pipelines will run to the new deepwater port, 30 miles offshore, where 2 24-inch floating crude hoses will load it onto the ocean's largest class of crude tankers. At least 14 giant pumps with a combined output of 86,000 horsepower will be needed to move the oil from Houston to Freeport and then out to the offshore terminal. The project will create 62 permanent jobs, plus up to 1,400 temporary construction jobs, according to the Maritime Administration. The project aims to improve the efficiency of oil exports from the Texas coast, where small tankers currently ferry oil from coastal depots to larger ships that wait in deeper water miles offshore. It will process more oil than the largest U.S. export terminal currently operating, Motor Ingleside Crude Export Terminal, owned by Enbridge in Texas, which moves up to 1.6 million barrels per day at the port of Corpus Christi, the nation's top port for oil exports. Compared to facilities and processes used today, this project will create a safer, more efficient mechanism for exporting oil and play a key role in facilitating U.S. energy security, a Maritime Administration spokesperson said in a statement. The administration's decision to lay out a series of final steps for the Seaport Oil Terminal to receive a license and begin construction. Plans to develop the offshore section date to the lifting of the oil export ban in December 2015, said Jordan Bloom, editorial director at Hart Energy in Houston. But efforts lost momentum in 2020 when the COVID pandemic caused global oil demand to dip. Now that demand has rolled back and prices are soaring, actually I have something to say about that, development of the export sector is pushing forward. The Maritime Administration's approval gives the Seaport Oil Terminal a clear lead amongst other projects. There was essentially this big race to build these, Bloom said. Not all of these projects are going to be built, so being the first mover is really important. The Seaport Terminal hopes to start operations by the end of 2025. When it does, Bloom says it will initially draw business from less efficient offshore terminals in Houston and Corpus Christi. Over time, it will enable growth in oil production from Texas shale oil fields and beyond. It will allow for increase in production to continue. It would encourage more production, but it wouldn't be a light switch, Bloom said. Thoughts? I actually have a couple, but I want to see what you're thinking.
I mean, classic, don't pay attention to, lefty politicians doing what Republican politicians would do. It's like classic one of these situations where Biden has a public position and a private position, and the private position is getting done. So,
also, I just think the timing of this. Go ahead.
well, also sending all of that like sending all that like then pressure for climate change onto the bottom rung of society, essentially. And we have to deal with its like consequences, like zombie viruses,
right?
And you know, oh God. Anyway,
but I have another thought, which, and again, this is going to be speculation, but I feel like the timing of this seems kind of, well, maybe not sus, but it seems kind of convenient given like what's happening in Europe in terms of, you know, Russia and, you know, the lack of energy, oil resources coming into Europe right now. Like, I just feel like, you know, and there have been reports that Europe is basically looking at the US now and basically being like, what the fuck are you doing? So, like, I just feel like this is a way to, again, speculation, but I'm speculating that this is the US's way to kind of be, what I wouldn't even necessarily say be on good terms with Europe, but to kind of, you know, basically give the middle finger to Russia, but then like being able to potentially sell oil to Europe at, you know, who knows how high, you know, depending how long this proxy war with Ukraine lasts, but potentially giving Europe the means to have this oil, but at, you know, an offer that at that point, depending how long it goes, that they can't refuse, you know, like, so I just feel like, to me, this just kind of seems, I think, especially given what's happening globally right now, this just seems kind of nefarious on, I think, climate change aside, but I think just the idea of being like, hey, we got some oil, you know, Europe, you want some, but not necessarily being good actors and kind of saying and how much they're willing to sell it for. Like, that's just what I'm thinking, and I may be off the mark, but that's where my mind really went to in terms of hearing about this and then just kind of knowing what's happening in Europe right now. So.
Yep. No, couldn't agree more.
As Rick says, capitalists going to capitalize. So yeah, I think, you know, this is just our way. Again, this is profiting, you know, big oil, you know, obviously, but I think then just the opportunity for us to export it. And then, you know, I think especially like I'm thinking Europe off the bat, you know, just giving them, you know, obviously they're going to need it, you know, because the pipeline from Russia has been destroyed. So now this is kind of America's way of saying, like, we can give you oil, but we can give it to you for how much we want because you need it and you don't have a choice but to take it from us. You know, so I feel like this is kind of like, again, kind of the way of kind of saying, suck it to Russia. But I don't feel necessarily they're going to be necessarily working with good faith with Europe either, or at least the potential is there for them to do that. So, you know, we'll see, because like I said, the article said this export terminal is not going to be open until 2025. But given what's going to happen with, we don't know how long this proxy war of Ukraine is going to be, you know, be something to kind of watch closely in terms of, you know, the effect of how, like, you know, what they plan to do with this oil as far as trade. So
yeah,
worthwhile watching, I guess.
Yeah, no, I think so. Yeah, I mean, fucking Biden, man, like,
overall, like, just, and we didn't talk about it because, you know, obviously, like, everything just went down today, but no one can say shit about Biden anymore. You know, like, the people will, but, you know, again, this story wasn't reported on. You know, this kind of went under the radar. But, you know, other than that, you know, like, he fucked over the railroad workers. The squad went to bat, you know, like essentially saying, you know, like the railroad workers can't strike, you know, like, and I said this in a tweet, that's scary to think about, you know, that our government basically has the hand to be like, you cannot fucking strike, you know, like, that is scary to think about that. And if they're able to do that in the railroad industry, there's no telling like what other industries might kind of take them up on it, that they can do it in other industries as well. So people should be worried about that, you know, in terms of what just happened today. So, but I also feel like with that, I think the workers made the mistake of kind of announcing when they were going to do it. You know, like, don't give away your cards, essentially. Like, don't announce when you're going to strike. I feel that was one of the biggest mistakes that they did, was like, we knew we knew of like when they were going to plan to strike. So they had time to rally and kind of do this shit. So, you know.
And they're funding police more than ever.
Right. So, you know, so people who go to protest, you know, it's going to be similar to what we saw, if not worse, to what we saw even maybe not January 6th, because there was no security, but like
Standing Rock. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, well, I think that's it for us tonight.
Ed is saying strikes are illegal, do it anyway. Yeah, I agree.
I mean, yeah, what are you going to do? It's literally the only thing you can do.
Strike or quit. Strike
Which is striking.
Yeah. Fine.
Yes.
You know, like, leave your job.
Tell other people not to show up. That's called a strike.
Right.
Like, that's
right.
We're just not going to call it a strike. This isn't a strike. I don't know what you mean.
Right.
This is an open air concert that we are having. Like, just, you know, like, no, we're having a block party, man. We got like block party things. Like, we closed off the street. It's fine. Slip a couple of fucking, you know, sheriffs some $100 bills, you know, like, you'll be fine. But speaking of $100 bills, you can always find ways to support us financially. You know, I am
once again asking for your financial support.
Yeah, like that guy said, you know, if you could.
But don't give it to him, give it to us.
Exactly.
You know, give it to us. Or better yet, give it to Empower Ed instead.
That
like
would also
what you would have
help.
given to Bernie and the Strut. I'll actually put my link in the chat if you're interested in donating to Empower Ed. I will put it. Hold on. I will put it in the chat. So, yeah, don't give to our politicians anymore. Don't do it.
No.
Give to mutual aid. Give to direct action. Give to me, or give to your favorite independent media sources, not the ones that gatekeep for the squad or whoever, like the Democrats.
Yep.
Well, I can't tell you who you should and shouldn't give to, but give to the people who, in your mind, are like really
We're
promoting
also
the truth.
monetized on Rumble and Rockfin if you want to give that way, you know, or like I said, we've got donation links in chat to things. We also have our store where you can buy merch at Indie News Not Shop. Any other commercials we need to get through?
We should probably add that link to the shop in description from now on. So we should probably start doing that.
It's also in our link tree at indienews.network, which you can always check out right there. You know, it's also an easy way to share the network itself. So, you know, if you want to share that with friends, you can. It's super easy little URL there to remember. But otherwise, you know, we probably should put a schedule up on there too. That would be smart, wouldn't it? But normally up next would be probably secret shows Friday and Saturday. I don't know if I'm going to do a Reefer After Dark. check out Tara's stream with Faina, the 14-year-old girl on the Ukrainian kill list. She had Igor Lopatnik and Faina's translator and activist Mira. People should check that out. That was a good stream. Hectic and at a weird time, because normally it would be Thursday. But yeah, I might try to get a Reefer After Dark together if I can find some guests to come for that. But Saturday we got what? Roar Media is doing stuff. Anyone else doing stuff Saturday? Another secret show, probably. Sunday, how do we miss that? Which me and Indy are back at that, doing that live. So check that out.
Monday, Extra Uncle Warren is going to interview Do Dissonance. They were on our show a few weeks ago, so definitely check them out. They're great. Yeah. That should be fun. New York guys like jamming out, so that should be a lot of fun. Tuesday, Jesse and Crab,
I think,
I'm going to do a show.
Yeah, either that or American Tradition, one of the two,
or something related. But Jesse is involved in something on Tuesday.
Yep.
And then next week we'll have to confirm, but our wonderful friend,
it's the motherfucking Savvy Sav stream. Did you see the meme I sent her the other day? It was very good.
No,
it was like Socrates. I do before something, and then it was like Play-Doh do, and then it was like Scooby Dooby Doo, you know, and I was just like also savvy Dooby Dooby Doo, you know. It was funny. She just like I think she made a face at me.
Yeah, so Savvy's scheduled to join us next week. We'll confirm it and let you guys know on the Twitters. You know where to follow us. Like I said, thank you guys for supporting us. Please like, share, subscribe, share this out to your friends. Help us get to our 1,000 mark. We are very close. We are about 135 shy from being there. So we definitely are on track to hit it by New Year's. So definitely help us out. You know, tell your friends about us, your family members, share our work, talk about us, and help us get there so that we can continue to grow. We want to get more people on board, but also, you know, with money, it won't be a lot, but we'll be able to do a little bit more things like, you know, we talked about having more shows. We talked about hopefully having some more INN news, more days of the week, you know,
more content at least. I know me and Collin, I talked about specifically trying to get 6 clips a week up, you know, and then you have a live show, right? So people can have some consistency there. And we might pre-record a couple, you know, and put those up. So, and just getting more content on the network in general, we're going to try to work on. So stay tuned. You can find all the links to all our networks, because we sometimes have to do stuff off YouTube, right? You can find them down there in that little Indie News Network thing, and, you know, which we have that link in the description below, as well as ways to support both me and Collin specifically. So anything else, fam, or is that it? I think we're bang on time.
Yeah, 2 hour stream. So yeah, good job.
So anyway, before we get too off the rails again, I'm gonna end this shit. So as always, kids, labels are bad. Stay independent. Good night, fam.
We want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.